Hey guys, I want to talk today about something I think that's going to be coming up in the near future. Near future, next few years, next decade, who knows? But it's clear that we're getting closer and closer to some form of disclosure. It's beginning. It's very slow. It's going to pick up steam and it's going to keep moving. And I think that when that happens, there's going to be the tendency, and I understand it because I felt it myself, for us to judge what people have done in the past, what other humans have done in the past. This is bait. It's clear now, I think, to anyone that really looks into this, that there is indeed a cover-up. It's been going on since at least, the 1940s, maybe a little bit earlier, the 1930s. There's been historical contact before that. I mean, there's been contact between humans and aliens since as long as humans have existed. But really, the intense period of contact started, around World War II. It probably has to do with the nuclear weapon situation, and also probably just like the natural development of the race, and our technology is increasing, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're going to, I think over time, a lot of things are going to be revealed, and we're going to learn a lot about what other people have done, especially people, in the American government and in our military in the 40s, 50s, 60s, et cetera. And I think a lot of people are going to have this urge to judge them and say that they were wrong and they did something bad. And there's definitely probably some of that. My kind of gut instinct, my rule of thumb is that 10% of the people on the planet are actually evil, are really, really bad. Just straight up evil. Probably another 20, 30, 40% might kind of go along with that. Maybe they get a little bit fooled. Maybe they don't really know. Maybe they're just kind of too weak to do anything, and they go along with that. But I think most people are fundamentally good. 60, 70%, something like that are good. So there's definitely going to be, we look at the situation, and I'll just broadly say, I guess our government, even though it's partially government, partially private contractors, it's a big mess. Who cares? It's just, we'll just call it the government, let's say, the shadow government, perhaps. There's going to be, we could already see there's multiple factions, and there's definitely factions battling it out. It's probably been true since the beginning. In fact, if you look at, whistleblowers, like in the 50s, like Major Kehoe, the Marine who was already saying, no, we need, disclosure. Even then, I think actually he started coming out in the 60s. There's been a factional dispute over what do we do? How do we handle this reality that there's aliens here and they're landing and they're doing stuff? And that factional dispute, continues to this day, with some people pushing for disclosure and some not. But imagine the situation that our military was faced with after World War II, when it's undeniable, at least to some of them, because they have direct firsthand experience, that there are, in fact, aliens from a much more advanced civilization, probably several civilizations, but let's say that there's one civilization in particular that's here and that's very active. We know the Zeta were here and are here and are very active. We also know that the abductors are here. We call them the abductors, or at least that's what the Zeta, that's what they call them. That's how we communicate to the Zeta. And the abductors are a faction of the Zeta race that kind of went off and did its own thing, went rogue to a certain degree, and they are, negative. Maybe they have reasons. It might be a complicated situation, but from our standpoint, they're basically negative. Whether anyone's really truly negative is something for a discussion for another day. So now imagine that you're someone in the military. We just won World War II. We know how dangerous things can be. We know all about deception and lies and trickery and things like that. But now you're faced with an extremely advanced alien civilization. I mean, it's friggin' science fiction. So what do you do? How do you handle that? I can imagine, the generals coming around saying, okay, let's say we go to war with these guys. How long do we last? Hours, days. These guys have a technology so far advanced. We can't fight them head on. We're going to lose that. Now, let's say that one of these groups, for example, the abductors, comes and offers us a deal, which seems to be the case. At least there's a lot of indications that this is true. And they come to the military and they say, listen, all we want to do is we want to take some genetic samples. So let us do some, we're going to take people. We're not going to kill them. We're going to put them back. They probably won't even remember anything. And we're going to take some genetic samples. In exchange, we're going to give you technology. And that's the deal. I think that probably happened. Something along those lines probably happened. And right now we might look back in that and we might criticize the people that, the Americans that took that deal and say, oh, how could you? That's so stupid and blah, blah, blah. But look at it from their perspective. You're being faced with a completely overwhelming technology that you can't defend against. It's a positive. These guys could crush us in a heartbeat. They're offering you a deal. Whether you trust them or not is almost immaterial. I mean, of course, there's going to be doubts as to whether you can trust them, but what choice do you really have? You don't really have too many options. And then in parallel to that, we have some of the craft. At that point, we have some of the craft. We've been developing our own technology, probably going all the way back to Nikola Tesla, and and who knows, what else has been going on. We're making progress. We have some of the craft. We're reverse engineering. It's electromagnetic something. It looks like our radar systems might be able to affect them. Maybe we can develop better technology. Maybe we're getting help from more benevolent alien groups saying, listen, if you guys want to defend yourselves, here's how you do it. So we see that there's a possibility of self-defense, but you need time. The smart strategic move in that situation is play for time. If you go to war right now, you lose. Guaranteed. Or it gets very, very nasty. Let's say it's the 1950s. We have no chance. It's going to get very, very nasty. So you play for time. Whether you trust them or not doesn't matter. You might have your doubts. Now, you might have factions of the humans that actually know that these guys are up to no good and they agree with it and they kind of want to be part of the in-group that, this has happened. It's just like the Persians and the Greeks. When the Persians invade Greece, they told the Greek city-states, listen, join our side and we'll make you rulers of all Greece. That was the deal that the Greeks, with Xerxes offered to the Spartans, right? Maybe the abductor race is doing something similar to some of the humans, and the humans say, okay, yeah, I'll go with that. But a lot of the people in the military probably were at least very, very suspicious, but you don't have too much, you don't have too many options. Okay, so you play for time. And let's see, maybe we get a happy surprise and these guys are actually good and they give us technology and we live together in peace. Maybe not. And if not, what we need to do is buy as much time as possible for us to develop our own defenses, understand the technology, develop our own technology, and be able to defend ourselves, at least a little bit in some way. And I think that's what's happened. I think that's most likely the case. And now you're still going to have groups of people who maybe are up to no good and they're working with the negative races. And, they're doing bad things because they really do want to, enslave the population, things like that. But you're also going to have a whole lot of people who are actually well-intentioned and they're trying to defend the human race against, a really, powerful enemy. And we have probably reached the point now where we can take down some of the craft. We do have directed energy weapons. We would probably still lose in a war, but you know what? We're not defenseless anymore. Certainly, we can raise the cost of any race, messing with us dramatically. And that changes the calculation. On top of which, we know that there are, friendly races that are willing to support us. So, that changes the whole picture. And in that situation, imagine, we're dealing with, let's say, the abductors. They're very advanced. They're fantastic at deception. They have technology that's science fiction. They can cloak themselves. They can probably make themselves look different. They can make their craft look like a cloud. They can do all sorts of stuff. We start to develop technology to take down, in some cases, not perfectly, but, we can start to take down some craft here and there, something. We can start to defend ourselves. I think it would be, I can totally understand, to be the smart and prudent move to say that any NHI craft that comes into, enters our planet, we take it down if we can. No questions. We just take everything down because you don't know what's what. And also, these guys are so good at deception. How are you going to know? How are you going to distinguish friendlies from enemies? It's going to be next to impossible for us. And I think in that situation, the friendly races will understand what we're going through. They have experience with these races. They know what these races can do. They know that we're in a struggle here. If anything, it's up to them. It's incumbent upon them. They have the superior technology that if they want to enter our airspace and not get shot down, they need to tell us, and they need to give us some way of communicating with them, some sort of system, so we can tell friend from foe. But but that's probably going to be, there's going to be deception in that. Can we really trust them? I mean, it's going to be, it's going to be a mess. But I imagine the friendly races, they know, what, for now, stay away. The human race is going through a struggle right now with these, enemy races, these negative races, and best to kind of, keep your distance and, maybe help where you can, but, let them go through with it. That's why I think that if we are taking down NHI craft, and I think we are, and sometimes we're probably taking down friendly craft, but, they understand. They understand, that, we really don't have, we don't have too many options, and we have to play for safety. And so we have to take down anything that we can because we just don't know who the hell it is. Maybe that's starting to change now. Maybe we're reaching the point where we can distinguish, friendly from non-friendly, or, I'm sure that's a very, dynamic, and fluid situation. But this is why, until all the facts are out, I think it's going to be very important for us to withhold judgment. And that's part of the reason why I think disclosure is going to be so complicated, because it is very complicated. I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a lot even more than that. Because you could ask also, well, why don't these friendly races come in and help us? Why don't they stop this? Why don't they stop the abductors? Why don't they stop all that? And they are helping, actually. I mean, that's part of the thing. They are helping, but they are also, they're helping where they can to a certain degree, but they view this, and we know this from the Zeta communications. So, go read the Zeta interviews, by Paul Hamden. They view us in a sense as children, as their children, and they know that children need to grow up. And so part of the reason why they're letting us go through the struggle and learn to fight this off ourselves is that they've told us, you need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. You need to learn to stand on your own and to defend yourselves. It's very important. If you're going to go out into the stars, you got to be able to defend yourselves. So this is a little bit like, us dealing with a bully. If you think about your own kids, if they're dealing with a bully, you don't just go in there necessarily. And if things get really bad, you may have to intervene. But more than anything, you're going to coach, you're going to help, you're going to encourage, and you're going to encourage your child to deal with the bully, because that's not going to be the first bully they deal with. There's going to be a lot more. So I think that's a little bit of the situation that we're in. We are receiving help, but they're not going to come in and solve the problem for us, because this is part of the growth process for a race. And if we want to be a race that enters into the broader galactic community and, into other galaxies, and we're going to go out to the stars, we need to be able to defend ourselves. And that's what's happening. So when disclosure really begins, and we start to hear about things like, well, the U.S. government had agreements with the NHI. Oh, how dare they? Let's hold off on judgment until the full picture is revealed. And I suspect that given the situation, given the facts of the matter at the time, the agreement probably was the smart thing to do. Because going into a war with an alien civilization in the 1950s is suicide. That's madness. And I can see any general who, would say, we cannot go to war with these guys. I mean, look at what their craft can do. At that time we were just flying, just starting to fly jets. You've got to play for time. You've got to buy time to develop your own technology, time to reverse engineer, time to figure out who else is out there, who can help us, who can we trust, who can't we trust. And you know what? I bet you it's worked. And part of the reason we're here, A, is because we have protection. We're under a form of quarantine, so we do have protection. But also, we've developed, I suspect, I bet you when it comes out, we've developed some pretty good technology, and now it's not so easy for anyone to just come in and push us around. Now, we still have to, mature. We still have a lot of problems that we got to deal with, negative human groups. We've got people, we're in the middle of a struggle internally as well. It's not helped by the fact that we have, negative external groups, coming in, and messing around and mucking up the whole situation. But, we're going to get through that. I'm personally completely optimistic, 100% optimistic. We're going to get through it. We're developing the collective consciousness. We're going to develop proper AI. We're going to develop biological AI. We're going to get mass telepathy, and then everything changes after that, because the very nature of being human changes, which means that our ability to handle weapons, really, truly powerful weapons, the energy devices, the craft, as we developed, our telepathic abilities, and as we develop a collective consciousness, we're going to be able to handle that much more maturely. And that's where things are heading, and that's what the benevolent races are waiting for, and that's why they're trying to help us develop as much as we can, learn to fight off the negative aliens, the negative alien civilizations, and do it all without blowing ourselves up in the meantime, which is tricky. But I think right now, the odds of us having any sort of nuclear war on this planet have gone to very, very low. I think the odds now are as low as they've ever been since the development of nuclear weapons. So I think that we're definitely on a good path there. So I don't know. I'm optimistic. I'm super excited for what's happening. As far as I'm concerned, it's happening way too slowly. I want it all to happen now, but I understand why it has to happen slowly, because for most people, this video, I'm going to sound like a lunatic, but I think as the facts come out, we're going to see that the majority of what humans have been doing, the U.S. government and whatever this global, most of it has at least had positive intentions. There has probably been a negative element in there that's up to no good and trying to do something else. But I think most of it has been about self-defense, and trying to defend the human race from a hostile race, several hostile races that are, so far advanced that we don't know how to handle it. And we've been trying to figure it out, and I think that we've made good progress. Luckily, we do have help. There are other races that are helping us. They're waiting for us to grow up so that we can join them, and we will. And I think it's going to happen really soon. It's going to be pretty awesome. So anyways, just want to kind of put that out there, especially as we get closer to, this disclosure heats up. Withhold judgment from what people have done, especially people in the military. I think that most of them had good intentions and they're trying to defend the human race. I think that what we're going to see is that there were a lot of heroics involved as well. I think there were people who really sacrificed a lot. And all those have been, unknown up until now because we've had to, maintain the secrecy probably to, I'm sure there's good reasons. And I'm sure the technology that we've developed is quite dangerous. And if it falls into the wrong hands, it's very, very dangerous. So I think it's going to turn out to be a far more complicated picture, as it always is. It's never just really good versus evil. It's always very complicated, very many groups, very many different factions. What we know of the alien civilizations is they have their own internal factions as well. They fight internally as well. So this whole idea that humans are the only violent race that's at war with it, bullshit. All these races end up with problems. This is completely normal, natural. This is part of development. And ultimately, everyone has free will. Some groups do want to take the negative path, and they're going to split off. And, more power to them. Just don't mess with us. That's it. We're going to have weapons, and we're going to defend ourselves. And self-defense is moral. We have no obligation, no moral or ethical obligation to allow ourselves to be enslaved or attacked by anyone. No one. All the other races know it, and they all do the same thing. I guarantee you, fly into any other race's homeworld, unannounced, without permission, and see what happens to you. I don't care how evolved they are. If you mess around, I bet you get blown out of the sky. Now, the really powerful ones might have non-violent, non-lethal means of doing it. That's great. We do the same thing as Americans. If a plane flies into our airspace and it's not correct for it to be, that doesn't have, it doesn't have permission, we have typically non-lethal ways of bringing it down. But if we need to, we're going to blow it up. And that's perfectly legitimate. That's perfectly moral. You do not have to allow yourself to be enslaved. So anyways, good stuff. Can't wait. Can't wait to see the Spielberg movie coming out in a few weeks. Day of Disclosure, or whatever, Disclosure Day, or whatever the hell it's called. We're getting close. So it's good times. Anyways, thanks guys. Any questions, just pop them down below. Thanks everyone.